Hi, we're really pleased to be welcoming James Banfield today, who is a life coach, hypnotherapist, NLP master practitioner at his Guildford-based company, the Liberated Mind. He also teaches and supervises other therapists from around the UK. And over the years, he's been fortunate enough to train with some of the best trainers and practitioners from all over the globe. And he's passionate about passing on his knowledge and experience to his clients and students so that people can heal from their past and create a more positive future. Welcome, James.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Oh, it's lovely to have you here. So, James, what was it that drew you to becoming a therapist? Can you tell us a bit about your journey, where you are now?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think for actually a lot of therapists, it comes from actually at some point sitting in the other chair. For me, I was an extremely anxious person for many, many years, and which stemmed from the fact that I lost my mother to breast cancer when I was very young. I was about 7 or 8 years old. And the year after that, her mother then passed on. So my grandmother passed away, and it had a profound effect on me. I think mostly because we were always told that she would get better, and then suddenly she wasn't. And I think, how do you prepare a child for that kind of thing? And I think I lost a lot of trust and became very anxious as a result of that. So for me, I basically struggled for many years until I discovered sort of personal development and self-help and spirituality and things like that. And it was always more of a personal journey for me. It was never, and I did psychology A level, but I had absolutely no intention of being a psychologist or a therapist or anything like that. For me, it was just interesting. And for me, it was also about how can I get out of this? I was highly motivated. And I think the people that kind of strive to be the best in this life tend to be highly motivated by tough beginnings. And I think if you kind of have it easy, you're quite comfortable, and therefore you don't necessarily push as hard. So I kind of see it as a strength, all of these things happening to me, because it really did motivate me to want better. And it was always a personal journey, but because of the kind of person that I am, I would always find myself being someone's they would come to me, they would open up, I would try and give them any advice that I had from all this knowledge that I was learning. And it happened one day. I was a musician, actually. I never had planned to do anything but music. I was a production producer. I was in bands. I was a singer and a songwriter. And I had no intention of doing anything else until one day I was on a train and I was helping somebody out. And they said, you know what, you'd be a really good life coach. And it was like a light bulb moment. It was like the music thing was kind of a bit stagnant, and I was a bit unhappy and a bit depressed about where things were going. And it was like something happened in that moment, and I was just like, I need to look into that. I have no idea what that is, but it kind of sounds interesting to me. So I started with coaching, and I booked up a free weekend course almost the weekend after that. And I haven't looked back since. I started as a life coach. I moved on to NLP. I did some neuroscience, and then finally hypnosis and hypnotherapy. And I just continued to learn and progress. And just like I always do, I end up then kind of passing on that knowledge to other therapists. I think I was very fortunate that because I sort of got a job at the music college I actually trained at, helping with the mental health there, that I got lots of practice because they would just send in student after student, and I was able to practice and get good very quickly. And I think, if you're passionate about something, it doesn't feel like work. So like you kind of learning for fun and you just trying things out. And inevitably, it's now moved on to now teaching other therapists how to do what I do, because I've now developed a kind of model of therapy which seems to be very consistent, and just about anyone that sits in the chair will get what they need as a result of that. So it's a great place to be. It's an interesting journey, and I'm very fortunate to do what I do. I can't believe I get paid to do it sometimes. I really can't. So there we go.
That just shows the best. And that really is laboring with love, isn't it?
It is. It's like a mission. It's not a job. It's yeah.
It was your calling, and it was, clearly really meant to be. And, you suffered in the past, and that suffering really was a key, wasn't it, to opening the door to your own healing and working now as a therapist and a teacher. And I hear that you've created a new therapy.
Yeah. Now, when I say it's a new therapy, it's not that it's original. It's almost a bit like the concept of NLP, which was before NLP came along, the success rate from going to a therapist was about 3%, which is quite alarming. So what they would tend to do is kind of put you know, some talking therapy and things like that. But if they couldn't get through to you that way, they would kind of give you drugs, right? And they would like keep you sedated and comfortable. And then NLP came along, and what they did was they started doing something called modeling, which was when they kind of took the best of the best, and they kind of said, well, why are they having better effects and success rates than some of these other people? And the three main ones that they kind of looked at were Virginia Satir, who was a family therapist, and then Milton Erickson, which we're all familiar with, and the Gestalt therapy chap, Fritz Perls. And between all of those, they developed a system called eventually NLP, which was basically just taking the best of everything and modeling it into something that was very easy to replicate, so that then they could train any therapist how to do that and they would get the same kind of results. So what I've done really is kind of just build on that and just add some extra other techniques, modern things, supporting it with hypnosis, which is part of NLP anyway, but just developing it into a structure. So it's more like a program. So you come in and we will deal with, in a very sort of structured, tailored way, your trauma. So all your trauma will be gone after the second session. So first of all, it's about stress. So we're going to get the stress levels down. We give you the neuroscience. It's about, you know, understanding why you feel the way you do, why you're thinking the thoughts you are and the emotions you are, giving you ways of emptying that stress, getting you back into the front part of your brain. And then we're ready to do some proper work. And that work will be to release all of the trauma and then move on to your emotional triggers, and then clear all of those and update them to something more positive. And then any anxiety patterns you may have that are keeping you stuck, because we can deal with all of your past, but if that's still in place, you're going to create new things. And then finally, any limiting beliefs that may be holding you back. And the reason this is so good as well is because once you've done all of that, you are then also kind of clearing away what we would call the kind of surface level symptoms that you get, because most people are really only trying to deal with the symptoms, things like I'm coming to you because I want to give up smoking. I want to stop overeating. I want to, you know, I'm having all of these like habits and I drink too much and all of these things. These are not the problems. These are the presenting symptoms of something much deeper, which is something I discovered in the sense that, you know, I kind of very curious about what makes people do what they do. And if you think about the kind of pattern of a New Year's resolution, for example, you know, we all kind of, again, choose one of those symptoms and we say, right, I'm going to give up drinking or smoking, whatever it is. And for a few weeks, we do quite well with it and we're really proud of ourselves. We're going to keep going to the gym. But ultimately, life happens and stress levels go up. And all of these skeletons in our closet suddenly get activated. And the moment that they do, we will do what we will reach for, whatever it is that we have to soothe that, make ourselves feel better or cope. So if you haven't dealt with those things, inevitably they are going to surface and you are going to be on autopilot. And before you know it, the cigarette's in your mouth or the drink is in your hand, or you just don't go to the gym or whatever it might be. So it's really about getting to the root cause. And I've got a lot of time for things like counseling and other kind of talking therapies. They have their place. But the trouble is, a lot of the stuff that people are trying to sort out in those therapies are unconscious problems. Yes. And if you're trying to deal with an unconscious problem consciously, it's not going to help because you're only dealing with it at a conscious level. And I get quite a few people that come to me and they will say, oh, I've worked on that. I've dealt with that. And consciously, they may have. But the moment they go into fight or flight, all of that goes out the window because they're not up here anymore. So essentially, they will hate themselves or beat themselves up for the fact that they've regressed back into the thing that they are supposed to have dealt with. So really, it's about dealing with the root cause, because once you get rid of all of that stuff and create how would you rather feel and create healthy patterns and things, you don't relapse. So it's 4 sessions or 5 sessions at the most, and you're done forever, unless you're making new traumas and things like that.
Which really isn't much time.
It isn't, no.
But you know, a lot of the traditional therapy, you know, that takes, you know, you could be seeing a therapist, a Freudian therapist, a traditional psychotherapist for so many years, and it's very past-based, isn't it? It's very much about looking at problems, going back. And you know, the benefits of the more modern type of therapy, like NLP, is it's quicker, isn't it? Because
there's no content. So this is the thing. People are talking about the problem.
Yeah.
and really analyzing it and pulling it apart. What's driving that? What's behind that? And actually, I don't need to know.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, that's great because they get to keep their privacy, especially men that don't like to talk about their problems. And they don't really want to share that private, you know, I'm just like, I don't need to know, right? You're going to be healing those things. It's really a facilitation.
Yeah.
I am going to guide you through some techniques and things that are going to help you to heal yourself. And I still won't know what happened to you, but you will feel better and you won't be able to get that feeling back. Would that be something you would invest that time and money into? And absolutely, most people say that they do. So again, talking about a trauma, for example, is a terrible thing to do because you will step back into that and you will relive it. And a lot of people I know that have gone to counseling and things like that, they say they come out of there feeling worse than they did before because all they've done is revivify and relive that terrible moment and remember it in more detail. And all of the, all of the effects that come with that are now very much open, like an open wound. So that's not what we're going to do in this kind of therapy. It's about actually dealing with it in a safe and controlled way, and it's done. And that's just very, very pleasing for people that have said they've been in therapy or counseling for years and years, and in a few short sessions, they now feel like that's just done. It's great.
You start out with life coaching as the start, and then therapy, and it really brings up what I think is an interesting question, which is that there's the folks, many of us, that have the deep traumas, the anxieties, the things that are really having a heavy effect on life, and yet we all have some stuff that's kind of holding us back from where we want to be. And so
Sure.
Could you talk a little bit about the difference between, bringing someone up to a functional level as opposed to somebody that's doing okay but feels they could be doing better, really thriving?
Right. So this is the interesting point. So I won't let someone become a coaching client until I've taken them through my mind reboot, which is what I call it, because then I'm sure that the skeletons are not in the closet anymore. They've cleared all of that. So essentially, yes, we all have some of those things, and some of us cope better with them than others. The only way I would say it's necessary to go looking for that is if it's really impacting you on a day-to-day basis to the point where it's stopping you from doing something. And that's the kind of questions I will ask. Well, what's getting in your way? In fact, before people even come to see me, I will get them to fill in questionnaires and things like that, so I know what I'm getting into, and I will want more information about that. Well, what's made you come to get help now? Why now, if this has been for many years? And I think nobody has to go rooting around in their past. But the thing with the trauma is, it's not just about what happened. A trauma is almost like when your amygdala takes a freeze frame of what happened, who you were, what you saw, what you were feeling, how old you were you sick at the time, everything, a snapshot of time, and then it puts it on a loop and it stores it in your hippocampus. And it doesn't just stay there like that. It stays there, but what happens is now your amygdala is on guard and looking out for anything that's even a little bit like that. And it can be oversensitive. And at times, so imagine you were bullied when you were a kid. You've forgotten about that happened many years ago and you've moved on, but your amygdala hasn't. And essentially what happens is you're in a supermarket one day and suddenly you overhear the voice of one of those bullies, and it kind of sets off the alarm, and you go straight into that loop or into that, and you're now in fight or flight. Now, as an adult, you're like, I'm anxious. I'm having a panic attack. I've got to get out of here. But there's no danger. You're looking around. It's because your amygdala doesn't speak to you in words. It basically activates your system, and you are now reliving that moment, whether you realize it or not. So if it was a case of that terrible thing happened to me, and if I forget about that, it's never going to bother me again. But the fact is, it can activate. And imagine if you've got lots of these little loops that are just firing off all the time. And that's what panic attacks are, really. They're just, and I always say to people, your body and mind are never working against you. As in, they're not doing this to you as in a punishment or this affliction that I have, which is a panic attack. Your inner child, that part of you that's trying to desperately look after you, is saying there's danger, there's danger, there's danger. And, it's trying to help, but actually it can be a real hindrance if you can't function normally because all of these loops keep firing off. So we could leave them like that, but well, you know what that's going to be like. So it's really good to just get them done. And wouldn't it be great if you've suffered from panic attacks for like 25, 30 years to just suddenly, it's one of the simplest things to fix. And people don't know that, and they just live with it and they suffer. And as someone, and that's what I say, I know how you feel. I've been there, and I can't stand to see someone suffer needlessly when I know that I can help. Now, I can't rescue everybody, which is why I then moved into the teaching, so that I can help more people I won't even meet them, but through that way. And that's kind of my mission, if you like, is to kind of spread this, because it works. It's quick, it's safe,
That's terrific. So NLP, as a component of the Mind Reboot, there's techniques that folks use, anchoring and a few others. Can you talk to us about that a little bit? Maybe show us.
Even demonstrate would be really good if there's anything you can.
Yeah, we could get some audience participation. There's so many. So in the first session that someone comes to sort of see me, what I will do is first of all explain what goes on in the brain. But then what I want to do is help them to have strategies and coping mechanisms and tools that really work, because it's all very well just saying, so, keep your stress levels down and all the rest of it. But they're like, well, that's very easy for you to say. So I'll say, no, we're going to give you very practical things that you can start using straight away. And the simplest thing is really just to get your breathing under control, right? If you get your breathing under control, that is the easiest way to manage your state. So there's lots of different breathing techniques. The simplest one I can give you is something called the 2-3-4 technique. And the idea behind this is, in order to count, you've got to be in the front part of the brain, which is where we want you when you're logical and rational. Taking in extra oxygen and holding it in for longer is going to naturally calm the body down. And taking a longer out breath, it's a bit like a sigh. It's almost like you're telling your amygdala the danger's past. And it's like, oh, thank God for that. I can relax now. And obviously having to focus on all these things is going to basically stop you from worrying about anything else. So what we could do is maybe do 3 rounds of that. I can do the counting for you, and then people at home could maybe follow along. So we're going to breathe in through the nose for 2 seconds. We're going to hold it in for 3 seconds, and then we're going to breathe out the mouth for 4 seconds. Okay, so here we are, breathing in. Hold it. Breathe out. Breathe in. Hold it. Breathe out. One more. Breathe in. Hold it. And breathe out. Now already you should just feel a lot more. You might even feel a little bit dizzy because you're not anxious right now, but if you were, it would level you up quite nicely. And you can be quite covert with that. Like, you can do that anywhere and no one's going to know what you're doing. So it's just quite a nice thing to be able to have. But another important thing that is quite simple, but most people don't really understand, is the power of your posture. Okay. Now, we could do a little experiment with this as well. So instead of thinking negatively, let's because basically there's a part of your brain that tells, the body which chemicals to release, but it can't see what's happening out here. So it relies on what we're doing with our body to kind of say, oh, if you're stressed and anxious and protecting yourself, it says, oh, here's some stress hormones. So we can kind of fake it, right? Fake it till you make it. So essentially what we're going to do, I'd like you to actually remember a happy moment or a good moment, a moment where you felt happy or confident in some way. And just remember where you were. Remember what was happening. Remember who was there, how it looked, how it sounded, and how it felt. And as you're feeling all of that, I want you to just sit in a nice, strong, confident posture and just enjoy that moment. Just remember who was there, why it was so good. And as you're feeling all of that, without changing anything physical, try to feel bad. You can't. It's physically impossible to feel bad if your posture is like that, because your physiology will always win over your mentality. So the simple thing of holding, and you can relax now, but the simple thing about holding your posture is that it will always win.
Round shoulders again.
Right. So, if you're getting your posture right and you're breathing right, off the bat, it's going to be a lot more manageable. If you're doing some public speaking, if you're just in public on public transport or something like that, whether you're sitting up straight, standing up straight, getting the breathing right. But let's do something that's a bit more, let's say that you've got an emotion coming up that you don't want, that doesn't feel good. And you can feel that that's coming, and it could be the beginnings of a panic attack or something like that. So what we've got is a twin nervous system, okay? The autonomic nervous system. So we've got the sympathetic, which gets us all riled up into fight or flight, and then we've got the parasympathetic, which calms us down. And it really is a bit like a spinning movement. So what we want to do is we want to use that momentum and that way of working to actually tell the nervous system what we want. So just for the moment, just imagine a time where you felt a little bit stressed out for some reason. And you'll notice that when you get stressed out, you'll normally notice it starts somewhere in the body. There'll be a center of that. And it's an emotion, which is, energy in motion. It's moving, it's a movement. So just imagine for a moment that that's almost like a spinning ball of energy. And it might help to close your eyes while you're doing this. So you close your eyes, you remember that moment, you remember the stress, you remember how that felt, locate that feeling, and you'll see that it's a bit like a ball of energy. And notice what direction it's spinning in, what color it is, and just take control of that and start to spin it in the opposite direction. And as soon as you do that, you'll notice it starts to change. It starts to loosen, it starts to relax, and you can just start to feel better now. And you may notice it starts to change color to a nicer color. And the more you spin it, the more you just relax, you calm down. And once you've got a good rotation going on that, you can start to move it away from you now. The further away it gets, the less you can feel it until it's fully outside the body. And once it's fully outside here, we can actually get rid of that. So I want you to really spin it now. Spin it as fast as you can. Make it as bright and as colorful as fast as you can make it. So fast, there's no way that's ever going back. And once you're spinning it as fast as you possibly can, take a nice big deep breath in and use that breath to just shoot that away. Gone. And that's it. It's a simple thing, but it's powerful. People are really surprised about how effective that might be.
That's extraordinary. As soon as it starts spinning, it does spin one way. And as soon as it started spinning it the other way, it was like, oh, that's not so bad.
It's because people are always amazed at how powerful this is, aren't they?
Absolutely.
You can do the hypnotherapy with them, and then you add in the NLP and like, wow, this is incredible. And it's
sure.
And they can do it anywhere.
They can. Well. You could close your eyes and do that on a bus with your headphones on or whatever it is, and it really works. I'll give you one more just because this is for someone that's already in it. And when I say in it, I mean maybe having a panic attack or something that's just so extreme that you haven't got time to try and visualize things or do anything like that because you're already in it. So this is called havening, and it's kind of my version of it. There are other versions of it. And the reason this is really powerful is because there's a lot going on. Okay. And I'm going to explain the science behind each bit. So essentially the first thing to do is cross the arms on the shoulders. And we're just going to kind of start to rub the outside of the arms. Now, what this does is it puts the brain into a delta state, which is basically deep relaxation. It's what we are in deep sleep. And it also releases positive hormones and chemicals into our system like serotonin. So you keep that going and then you look up and you're going to start looking left and right. And you just keep that bilateral movement of the eyes going. And that starts to send a signal down your vagus nerve. It's now resetting the system and sending out the signal, all of that stress out of the body. And then you're going to breathe deeply. So you keep all three things going, breathing deeply. And if you want to add to that, you can start counting backwards, or you can use things from other techniques like reassurance. You can say, it's okay, I'm safe, I can calm down now. And then you can move the eyes into the center, now looking towards each ear. So it's still keep the arms going. Now you're looking left and right towards each ear. Keep breathing, keep reassuring yourself. And then after a few minutes, you can then look down, left and right. So what this does is the different parts of the eye take care of different things. So when you're looking up at the top, it's dealing with the visual. And then in the middle, you've got the sound. And then down here, you've got the kinesthetic. So what you're doing is you're kind of resetting the system. This is your vestibular system here. And it just sends all of that and it resets as you're getting those nice chemicals, you're in a relaxation state, the extra oxygen, and you can count backwards, which again would put you here. So there's so much going on here. It doesn't matter how kind of stressed or panicky you might be, within a few minutes, you'll be okay again. Because again, you've got to concentrate. You've got to be in this moment. So it's almost like a presence thing as well. It brings you back to the now. So a lot going on with that. So hopefully that will be helpful in some way to some people watching.
Yeah, it's a really lovely one, that is. It reminds me of you know, patting your head and rubbing.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. You've got a lot to think about.
As a child, maybe that relaxed us. That's maybe
Yeah.
why we like doing it. Because it's a bit like tapping, isn't it?
That's the other one. So the reason tapping's good is and actually there's a shorter version of that. So essentially the original EFT, the emotional freedom technique, there was so many different points to tap. Everyone was like, I'm not really sure what's going on. So there was a chap that invented fast EFT, and it's very simple. So there's only a few points to tap. There's between the eyes, there's the side of the eye, under the eye, the collarbone, and then you grab the wrist and just take a really nice deep breath. And as you're tapping, you're just saying, I acknowledge this feeling. It's safe to let this feeling go now. And you just keep saying things as you're tapping the different places, and then you just let it go. And it's amazing how quick it is. It's great for overthinkers because they can't overthink while they're doing that. And it's interrupting the system, because what's actually happening there is because you're actually entering. So you're focusing it at the very feeling or whatever it is, the thoughts that are causing you distress. And because you didn't do this when this thing originally happened to you, the brain goes, well, this is new. So I have to open up. I go into a learning state. And these are meridian points, which is obviously releasing some of that tension. But what it does is it kind of interrupts what the original loop was and adds resources into that so that the feeling changes and the loop therefore changes. And then what happens is a protein goes save. So whatever that is now, it's kinase C. It's like a protein latches onto the neuron. And the moment it does that, whenever they try and get that feeling back, they will get the new version of that loop. So essentially, and it's funny to watch people struggling because they want to prove you wrong. I'll say, really, I want you to try and get that back now. And they just can't do it, which is a good thing. But they sometimes need that evidence procedure. Well, I'm going to have a good go. And I'm like, no, please do. I really want you to be sure before you leave my office that really can't come back. And it can't. There's science behind it. So that's great.
Yeah, I was thinking that must be meridian points that you were hitting.
Correct.
Going through there.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense, to, in a sense, just distracting yourself with a technique. And then if you add in the fact that you're doing something that is going to change things physiologically and energetically, it's doubly powerful or triply powerful.
It's confusing the mind so that the patterns are able to collapse. That's what's happening, isn't it, James? And I think that's probably why it surprises people that something as simple as that.
It's always simple. Yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah.
It really doesn't.
So lifelong trauma can be released very quickly, can't it?
Very quickly.
The techniques that you're talking about, and you've experienced that in your own life when you were younger.
Absolutely. And we're not going to get rid of any memories. You keep all the memories, but the trauma or the emotional charge, the spike of emotion that you get is no longer there. So you can look at it from here rather than going into your limbic system, which just basically means you can almost disassociate from it. You can look at it logically and rationally, so that now when people say, I've worked on it consciously, well, now you can, because you're not going to be triggered back into it because it's been neutralized, it's been made safe. That loop has now been moved up because it's been given the stamp of approval that, oh, okay, I've got the learning from that. The emotion's no longer necessary. It's safe. I can now file that away with all of the other long-term memories.
File it away into a narrative that you have control over, so you no longer have that trigger that's been an unconscious pattern, which probably confuses people who, apart from this one big elephant in the room, are rational and together.
It's true. And, it wouldn't be good if we were removing memories altogether, because they are part of our rich tapestry. They are our history. And actually, we get to keep the learnings, right? We get to everything that so we know what not to do next time, all of these things. So really, I call this subtractive psychology, because it's really removing everything that doesn't belong or that isn't serving us, so that what's left is actually a well-adjusted, grounded, confident human being that is now ready for coaching and to say, well, what do you want? What is your goal? What do you want to work towards in your life, without all of that past getting in your way? Because otherwise you're looking at this through a filter of your past, and you're just going to keep getting more and more of the same. You've
got the higher brain structures controlling the lower, as opposed to the opposite, which is what happens when you run into a trauma, an anxiety, a panic attack situation, right? It's the lower starts driving the higher.
It does. that's the body driving the mind, basically. Yeah.
It's terrific stuff.
Oh, hence Mind Reboot. It's perfect name for what you're able to offer people.
Yeah.
And you can do that with people online now as well.
Yeah, I primarily work online. It's great because they're in a comfort environment, their own home. And like I say, it's completely safe. It's not really traditional hypnosis in the sense that, yes, their eyes might be shut, but they're talking to me. They're very conscious. They know what's happening. If they need to open their eyes, they can, and then go straight back into it. There are lots of safety precautions in place. So it really is, it kind of came along at the right time, obviously, with the lockdowns and things like that, because, you know, in a way, they still get the benefit of the healing without having to come to the surgery. So
perfect timing. And can you let the viewers and listeners know your website so that they can find out more about you and,
sure.
and the sessions you do?
Yeah, it's theliberatedmind.co.uk, an appropriate name because that's kind of what you get on the tin, and it's basically a very simple, I need to update my website, but really it's broken down into explaining what exactly the different sort of disciplines that I do is. But the Mind Reboot is just a package that you can buy on there. And, you know, I'm now training up. So I'm training about 22 more therapists this weekend on that. And I've got a really lovely group that I kind of work with each month. And I'm just, as I make discoveries, I'm now doing workshops and I've got guests, people coming in. So one of my mentors from Canada, actually, Brad Henning, I have to shout out for him because I wouldn't be where I am and as good as I am without his guidance. He's just a very, very special human being, and he's got the biggest heart, and he really just he's been doing it a very long time. And yeah, it's a real, he's never charged me a thing. It's like we're friends at the same time. It's like, you know, if you believe in, you know, fate and meeting the right people, it's a partnership that's been very special to me.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, thanks so much, James. We've really,
yes, thank you. This is fascinating.
I feel so chilled out
helpful
with those techniques as well.
Yeah. I'm glad you've enjoyed it. I know I have. It's always great to kind of share that because we don't get to
no,
you know, we just kind of get on with our thing, don't we? And it's not really about you know, kind of the, hey, look at me. It's more about, look, this stuff works. We really want to get the message out and get as many therapists using it, because imagine it, you know, you four or five sessions and you're done. And then, you know, and you know, you could argue it's a terrible business model because, you know, you could be seeing people for years, but actually the beauty of it is they tell people because it's something they found that works. So actually, if you're a therapist and you're like, well, I kind of like the fact that I get lots of money that way, you know, it's great because the turnaround is quicker. You get lots of people that, you know, and it's more satisfying to actually make a difference. So yeah, I highly recommend that people start to use this stuff.
Well, sounds great. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank
nice
you.
to meet you.
Lovely to